Peace, peace, test, test. All right, looks like it's working now. Islam. All right, Islam and greetings. I am Brini Naji, joined by Sister Zara Bey, the two altars of Sister Tahida Najib Lael of CalifaMedia.com and the purplepaperclip.com, among many other things that I currently have in the works. Um, yeah. So before we begin, I had intended on doing or speaking about the homeschooling or focusing on the children. And then in the process of setting up this chat, something else popped up and it was like, oh, okay, this must be an indication that it might be behoove us to start before the children, right? As insofar as the male female dynamic. And I'll be getting more into that as we go on. Oh, let me record this. Just a second. All right, good to go. Okay. So to begin, I will play a section from that. It's funny how stuff just falls in line. Um, not that I support or align myself with Farrakhan or the Nation of Islam, but this uh this portion of a speech he gave is quite fitting to what I'll be covering tonight. All right, just a second. Get this going. Turn off these speakers. Uh, all right. Now let's see what that do. All right. Okay,
Back, push the woman back. That is in Islamic society, that is in Jewish culture, that is in Christian culture. A woman can bring you your savior, but she can't represent him. She can give him birth, but she can't preach. You use women and you level them to a position that you can control them, or I and we as men can control them. But you don't understand, when you oppress a woman, you oppress a nation. When you beat down a woman, you beat down a nation. When you uplift a woman, you uplift yourself and an entire people. Push the woman.
all right. So that was the piece from Minister Farrakhan, speaking on the pushing down women, and why that comes up is because and this actually relates to something that came up last week as well. Um, I am not going to name names because I don't want to take the chance that naming this person's name will result in the same prosperity that it's resulted in on my end from what he did, right? But if you want to know more, you can go on to Canaanland Moors and his video dated today, January. Where is that extra noise coming from? Hold on a second. Okay, so his the Canaanland Moors video dated January 1st. I'm sorry, January 20th, and you'll be able to see um he goes in on it. He breaks it down so you don't have to sit through 3 hours of this, for lack of a better word, this idiot, this dummy. He really is dumb. And I'll get into that in a minute. You don't have to sit through 3 hours of him rambling. Cujo covers just the portion that really matters. And the portion that got my attention was that okay, this person has been going, or he managed to gather around himself an audience and went on to to credit all of the work done by myself to someone else. All right. Um, I run a book company, CalifaMedia.com, and I publish books, right? Cujo Adwo L is one of a few authors I work with, and this guy has such animosity, such hate towards Cujo. He didn't even bother to go on CalifaMedia.com, who he's talking about, and click on the About Us page where he will see, big as life, who's who. But no, he goes in and says, "Oh yeah, look at Cujo. He's setting up a book company named after a woman and taking all the credit like he's a woman, and we all know what he up to." And I'm like, well, that's pretty offensive. And then he went on to say the same about Sister Roz Mariah Bey, another sister who has started her own publishing company, and she happens to publish of an amazing master teacher, Taj Tariq Bey. I can understand why people would think Cujo is running Khalifa Media. I get it. I understand why people would think um, Taj is running um, RV Bay. I get it. The only issue with RV Bay is it's not named after Taj. It's actually named after the woman who's doing all the work, and she publishes his stuff. And she doesn't publish herself. She doesn't promote herself, so everybody thinks it's Taj. Same thing going on my end, I guess, because this actually came up last week, where somebody was like, "Oh, you're the one that started Khalifa Media." Yeah, and I'm gonna take that. That's on me. That's on me. If people don't know who I am, that's on me. Even though I kind of like it like that. But anyway, I just found it amazing how one, this guy, he's calling himself a Moor, and he obviously did not do his research. All you had to do was go on, you talking about Khalifa Media. Google that. That's easy. Look, go on the site right there at the top, about us. And you go in and there's all this information about us. But obviously, if you did do that, wow, that's really messed up. But it really looks like you didn't do that at all. And it's really offensive because, well, I guess I shouldn't be. I actually thought about it and I was like, I shouldn't be offended because this says way more about this person than it does about me or Sister Rod. And I'm not trying to like align myself with her, trying to, unlike this person trying to, use her name to promote myself, which is like, it's pathetic, And for a woman to call a male pathetic, yeah, it's pathetic because we deal with children and you're pathetic. All right. Um, but I was like, no, this is more telling of what you're dealing with and what you have around you on the regular. It probably never even occurred to you that some other person could be doing this. I get why you would think it was Cujo because Cujo's quite active. He's teaching every single day if he can, right? And he's put out 7 books, right? Meanwhile, I'm just sitting back here doing the work because that's my lane. And but it would have been something easy to solve. But like I was saying, it's my thought was he's doing this because of the lack of active women around him at all. I'm not just saying Moors, right? Um, because if he was around Moorish women, he would have asked one of them and they would have set him straight because real Moorish men, not males, they're humble like that and they have an appreciation for womanhood as instructed by the prophet, right? So I actually felt sorry for him. Like, wow, it didn't even occur to you that myself or Roz could actually be the ones that's making what we putting out. We're the ones that's making it the way that it is, right? But you want to go ahead and jump the gun and attribute it to a guy. First mistake. Second mistake. He goes in and says, wow, he should be ashamed of himself. First, he stole the name because that's a woman. And second, the Califa is the successor. Who does he think he is? And I'm just listening to this like, wow, I've heard of this stuff happening to people, and I couldn't believe when I heard it. When you sitting up listening to somebody straight up make lies about it, he's making it up, making it up as he go along. And I'm just sitting here like, man, this is interesting. First of all, it's a guy doing all the work. And second, you telling me where the name came from, and you ain't even close, right? For the record, yes, it's Califa Media. That was a happy accident. All right. Um, I was or I was residing in California at the time, and I was working with a group of other Moors, getting all our stuff together, helping get their stuff together. And it was becoming apparent that we needed to get everything like in a central location and needed a name for it, right? And I had put in like California Media, right? And the Grand Sheik there, it was Victor Taylor. He was there. He'll probably remember the story if you ask him, right? He was looking over my shoulder because I was serving as his secretary or his assistant. I wasn't his secretary. And he was like, "Oh, you got California spelled wrong." And I did. It was a where the O should have been, right? The first O, yeah. And I deleted it all the way back to that A. And he said, "Leave it just like that." So it had nothing to do with Islam. It had nothing to do with Queen Khalifa. All right. It was a typo that happened to be the name of Queen Khalifa. Just happened to be the Arabic word for successor. That's not where it came from though. But I'm just sitting up this dude. I'm just like and Cujo was playing the video. It's like you just going on and on and on and on, lying, and it's just it just blows my mind. It's like you don't have any of this right. Where did you get this from? Only place I can think of is you just mad and you making a whole bunch of stuff up. All right. And my thing is like that's really interesting coming from a so-called Moor. And it reminded me of a passage that I'm gonna read real quick from okay, I know I marked it. Okay. From the Sibyls, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata. It was perfect. All right. Okay, it says, as the sole spiritual authority in the ancient world, the Sibyls were famous for uttering warnings and admonitions to the villages, cities, and ancient kingdoms, including their leaders, prophesizing their doom and fulfilling their hopes and restoring lost glory. They'd right moral wrongs and punish offenders of the divine law. Centuries before Christ, they were known to heal the sick, restore dignity and strength to the weak, and sight to the blind. They were famous for curing lameness, epileptics, deaf mutes, and lepers. They were said to quote unquote cast out demons and even quote unquote raise the dead. The last reference is probably meant to quote unquote call up and materialize the spirit of a dead person. For example, a Sibyl named Hierophili resided in Cumian, Rome, and was famed for calling up the spirit of the apostle Samuel from the dead. And it goes into the section Sibyl's Divine Oracle Basis for Western Bible. However, the Sibyls' most significant contribution were their famous oracles containing the divine prophecies that they would utter in trance possession. These prophecies will be carefully written down by their assistants and compiled into books. These prophetic proses were the basis for Greek and Roman tragedies and plays. These prophetic books were later collected by the Roman authorities and soon became the sole and undisputed precursor to the Western Christian Bible and would later lay the ecclesiastical foundation of Western civilization. Over the millennium, other Sibyl prophecies, oracles, and revelations were systematically retrieved and purchased, stolen, or haphazardly collected by various means all throughout the ancient world where their temples existed. It was these books that would later be plagiarized, revised, or altered and compiled into one quote unquote holy book known as the Sibylline Oracles. They would later become the center of the bitter quote unquote doctrinal and heresy wars between the warring Levitical Jews and the emerging Roman Vatican authority. As the African matriarchal power began to decline and her colonies taken over by foreign conquerors, it was the thrones and sacerdotal power and prophecies of the Sibyls that was stolen from them by the emerging Roman Church. Their religions were later labeled as quote unquote pagan slash heathen under a now racialist Roman authority. The emerging Roman Church, in their ignorance and ambition, acquired and doctored the Levite Jews' corrupted versions of the Sibyl prophecies until one could hardly distinguish one forgery from another. One of these prophetic books were used by the Vatican to compile what is today known as the Judeo-Christian Bible, crediting their authorship to conspicuous Roman and other male prophets. Again, some of these books were used by the Vatican to compile what is known today as the Judeo-Christian Bible, crediting their authorship to conspicuous Roman and other male prophets. Those books for which it was hard to conceal their African matriarchal origins were simply destroyed or relegated to heresy. Okay, next section, and it's the last one. The gender of God, originally female, or the gender of quote unquote God, originally feminine. The gender of quote unquote God was later changed from feminine to masculine. Originally, within each prophetic verse, it is claimed that the Sibyls made praises to quote unquote mommy as quote unquote Our Lady, and proclaimed that she was quote unquote greater than any other God in the world. Roman Senator Cicero, the orator, writes that the last three books of the Sibyl Hierophilae were deliberately burned in a fire by the Roman governor, Stilticon the Tyrant. That's an interesting name. Wait, Stilicon. Okay, Stilicon was eternally hated by all of Rome for his sacrilegious act, which prompted a universal reaction from poets, scholars, and musicians alike. So worshipped was this Sibyl of Comia that she was immortalized by all of Rome in one of her appellations, Europa, for which Europe is allegedly named. Okay, the Sibyls group were the original persecuted ones. It was this African traditional regionalist group and not the so called Christians who were the actual ones persecuted and finally enslaved. It was the Sibyl style of prophecy and magic that would later be limited by a militant faction from these patriarchal Levitical groups, whom, envious of her global positioning, rebelled the divine matriarchal orders and seized their temples and overthrew their priestesshood. In their jealousy, hatred, and rebellion of her divine authority, the Levitical Jews elevated their original minor deity, Jehovah, as an insult to her. Together, Jehovah and his patriarchal clan usurped her sacerdotal and secular power, and from that moment on, they have worn it as their own. Millions of her people were murdered or enslaved, and millions scattered to the four winds all across the world. The historical evidence shows that it was these groups and not the Christians who were the actual ones persecuted and finally enslaved. The New Testament is actually a historical chronicle of the final destruction of all remnants of the African matriarchal authority. Books that were politically and not divinely inspired, which is why the Levitical Jews, enemies of the Roman Church, refused to recognize them as authentic. All right. And again, that one I read because it shows but that one is like a nice little or a good little history lesson that shows how the patriarchy got established and what's still going on, right? And so I think that person, I'm not gonna call that my brother because how dare you? You didn't do your research and you're giving credit where it's not due, and that's messed up. And it's like, Dad, if anything, this should be celebrated. As much as Moors not complain, as much as Moors lament how they wish more sisters would get involved in our movement. And here you go giving sisters credit to brothers who give it right back to us. So thank those brothers, right? Those the good Moors. You just a filthy male, right? Yeah, I don't like that because I'm wondering, like, dang, is this why more of our women won't step up? Because they think they just gonna get shut down anyway. Some guy's just gonna steal her credit anyway. She might as well just be quiet, go back in the kitchen, and just wait for somebody to order something, right? Man, screw that. All right. So my sisters, um, it really is on us. All right. The brothers, they got their part. I love that picture of Noble Drew Ali where he's bringing the sister out of the cares of the world. And it's like, could you hook us up, brothers? Please. She's asleep. She's unconscious, right? So she can't do it. And I actually covered this last week on the last chat talking about that might I I believe that's why so many of our women, because I ain't thinking about nobody else, just like they not thinking about us. Um, so many of our women are constantly in a bad mood because they're living against their nature, right? And males like this one trying to, assign sisters efforts to men, right? he's just as big as a problem as she is. Because whereas this we're just like so out of line with nature. We got all these strong women and all these weak males. All right, weak, weak, weak. So weak they can't even imagine that a woman can like, even though she taking care of him. Even though he probably still live with his mama, he can't imagine a woman actually being in charge of something that he would love to accomplish, but knows he ain't got the talent to do it. You know, and it's just like that's fine. I don't have any. I can't fix a car. I don't know how to change a tire. All that kind of stuff. Which is like probably child's play to a man, but can you go in the kitchen and make homemade gyro meat vegan? That sounds simple to me, because we each have our natures, right? Men's nature is to provide from the outside, right? Go out. My father used to say, go outside, hunt the buffalo, kill the buffalo, drag the buffalo home, and maybe it'll be skinned enough for your mother to get started cooking. That's all he wanted from her. That was her only duty. And he used to tell that story so many times, right? And it was interesting that he always said a buffalo, right? Uh, but yeah, I just wanted to cover that. The whole patrilineal thing is obviously still an issue. Um, I'm not really worried about the right Moors not doing this stuff. Because I was actually speaking with a learned Moor, and his question was like he doesn't understand why people follow these kind of where these Moors come from, or these people, these what are these niggas in dirty Moor skin. All right. He's like, where do they come from and why are people following them? I don't care where they come from, and I'm glad people are following them. He can take the dross. All right, he can have them all. Because the prophet even said, what are all these Moors doing here? I'm only gonna save a handful, and a handful gonna be I'm gonna save a handful with fingers left over, right? So, you know, I would give that brother a shout out, but like I said, I checked my platforms. Like, okay, usually even bad publicity is still publicity. Let me check my platforms. Oh, since he released this mug, I made $1,000 in 3 days since he released it on one platform. And I'll just leave it. That's one platform. So thank you for that, sucker. Right? That's what happens when you try to do bad things to good people, or you just don't do your research. Right? I don't like that stuff. If you have an issue, at least get your facts straight. And then you might not even have an issue. Right? And this was too easy. You could have just Googled Califa Media. It would have came right up, you know, because I pimp my site and I know how to use that stuff where you can Google it, and the about us page pops right up. But nah, I guess that would have interfere with your narrative. All right. But this is not to downgrade or diss the brothers, because I'm only up here because Cujo suggested that I get on here. Right. My thing is I like I like being in the back, behind the curtains. I like being the power behind the throne, the kingmaker, that kind of thing. Don't nobody come after the kingmaker, that kind of thing, right? But again, spot a need, fill a need, because I guess enough sisters aren't voicing themselves, even though there are plenty out there. This is not to take away or knock them, but here's one more. You know, so let's see what else. Let me check something real quick. So got that out the way. Give sisters their credit, encourage them, right? Um, I think about cultural artifacts, and this kind of segues into what I actually wanted to talk about tonight. Um, I was watching a documentary called Gather. I suggest that anybody who has Netflix go ahead and check it out. It's a documentary about quote unquote natives trying to re engage their native dietary practices. And it's really cool, right? And the part I really like about it is they don't skimp on the history, and they call a spade a spade. They call them colonists, they call them murderers. They don't call it colonization, they call it the time of genocide. Like right out the gate. Oh, okay. I think, oh, okay. And so I'm watching it. Beautiful movie. The scenery is just gorgeous. And I'm just waiting for it. Like, yep, let's see who paying for this. I bet I know. Let's see who paying for this. Yep, grant money. All right. So these colonists are trying to buy their way out of the punishment they're not going to be able to avoid. But hey, that's neither here nor there, and that's something I will be getting into at a later date. But the part that I wanted to speak on tonight was how they were using food as the means to rediscover their culture, right? And it was so cool because they started out with this elder. I don't know how old she was because unfortunately, because of the European poison, everybody that's not European is aging badly because the rest of the people they don't eat like Europeans. They eat their own food, right? But yeah, I don't know because they said she was with a little girl and they said it was her niece, but I'm like, you look like her grandma, but I don't know, right? And I was like, this is so cool. This older woman is taking this little girl out here to show her how to harvest seeds in the wild. And I'm just like, this is dope. So right there, you guaranteed that this is as long as she's okay, as long as she lives long enough to get it to another girl, it's going to live. And you probably gonna discover some other stuff too. And the thing they were talking about because they opened up a restaurant around it and everything. It was so dope. I suggest you go watch the movie. It's called Gather. It's a documentary. And they were going into like, okay, so we have to harvest this food. And the way it's harvested is why we have this craft, right? To produce these artifacts. I mean, and I'm just like, so the food really is reconnecting you to your culture, right? And I guess that is it. I love the name Gather because what is everything comes down to dinner. All right, for real. And that made me think. So, dag, that's right. So, what is our culture as Moors, right? Okay, we got the dress down because the prophet showed us that, right? We got the observances down because the prophet showed us that, and we actually like it's becoming normalized. So Fridays Moors go to temple or they stay home with their families or their houses and they study. Just remember that they're Moors, that kind of thing. Sundays, I go to Sunday school in Canaanland. All right. And I guess other Moors are doing the same with going to Sunday school somewhere. And then Saturdays, right? On here, for some reason, it's just like wall to wall Moors on stereo app where we just like kicking it, hanging out with each other, enjoying the presence of other Moors, enjoying the fact that we don't have to explain or teach anybody anything, right? And we all know how to act with each other because we know our history. It's that simple, right? And it's like we all just I don't know if y'all notice it, Moors, how we'll just we'll just show up in a gathering of other Moors and just slide right up in the conversation, right? Like what's going on? Like we know each other. We don't even know each other, but we know each other just because we have that common thread of being Moors, and there's actually stuff to go with it. But back to the documentary. Yeah, they were talking about how they had certain songs they would sing during the harvest or the fishing or the gathering of certain things. Like, where's our songs, right? They had certain clothing that they would wear. Where's our stuff? Like, wait. Specific clothing to just go do this one gathering because it was all around food, right? This one gathering thing, right? So, I bring that up because that's gonna have to be on the sisters. Moorish men, oh, Moorish men, not males. Even the boys are dope, not the males. All right, those are different. Those are to be swept aside, and they're the reason why we are going to have polygamy in place because these muds cannot be allowed to breed. All right. Um, what was I saying? Oh, Moorish men, they are the bomb. And actually, I'm gonna read something to y'all real quick if I can find it. I know where it is, but I'm gonna go there in just a second. All right. All right. All right. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Again, how Moorish men are with their women. All right. I'm going to read a passage from Hold Me Up. Hold Me Up. Noble Drew Ali's Lessons on Law and Spirituality, prepared by Grand Sheik Divine Minister Cujo Adwo El, and edited by myself, Sister Tahida Najiul Labe, or El, I'm sorry. um, so I'll read the introduction, because I thought I was just going to put the book together, but nope. Cujo asked me to write an introduction. I'm like, why you want me to write an introduction? Because the book is like, I'll say like maybe 75% about why it is so important. A lot of Noble Drew Ali's lessons are about uplifting women to get us all out this mess. All right. So this is the introduction. After I read what he sent me, and I'm just like, are you serious? So here's the introduction from Hold Me Up. All right. It says the master is only the master because he is linked to a higher authority, at whose command he acts and to which he is responsible. When he mediates between heaven and earth, he always acts at its bidding. He never claims to be the source himself, but refers to a higher reality, to an otherworldly authority, to God or to his own master. His submission to this authority and veneration for those who have served it before him are an intrinsic part of what he is and does. Its presence shapes and infuses all his quote unquote ceremonial actions. And that passage is from The Call for the Master by Karl Graf von Druckenheim in The Inner Journey Views from the Buddhist Tradition of the Parabola series or the Parabola Anthology series 2005. Okay, my part. Seventh book authored 7 years after the release of his first title, 13 years after coming into Moorish science. Result: a timely digest for the enlightenment and edification of the Moorish community. Initially, I thought this to be a book on holding up the Prophet Drew Ali, but as I read, there was another message as well: to save the nations, hold up the woman. By uplifting the Moorish Muslim woman, we uplift all of humanity. As the degradation of her mental and spiritual state is directly reflected in the current state of all nations today. Oh, I'm sorry. As the by uplifting the Moorish American Muslim woman, we uplift all of humanity. As the degradation of her mental state and spiritual state is directly reflected in the current state of all nations today. After reading the Grand Sheikh's latest exploration of the Moorish movement, I came away with an elevated sense of pride, mission, and obligation. To be worthy of such lofty consideration, that your well being is directly tied to that of the entire world, impels one to prove themselves worthy of such. Uh, the analysis is inspiring and uplifting, outlining the tools left to us by our prophet and breaking down their use. Employing an informal yet insistent tone when discussing the importance of recognition of the teachings of the Prophet Drew Ali and the importance of the matriarch by the nations and by herself. Grand Sheikh Cujo Iwo El demonstrates why he proves himself worthy of the title Master. Your sister in Islam, Sister Tahida Najiullah El, Managing Editor, Califa Media Publishing. So yeah, that was the introduction from Hold Me Up, Noble Drew Ali's Lessons on Law and Spirituality, prepared by Grand Sheik Divine Minister Cujo Adwo El, available at any fine bookseller and at CalifaMedia.com. So yeah, well, that's a good half hour. That's good. I got my spiel out. I feel better. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for your attention, all of those who listened in and will listen later. I really appreciate that. And I think I'm going to play that passage from Farrakhan one more time because it's fitting and timely. And it was interesting that I came across it today while trying to affirm that, sisters deserve credit. Oh, I can't find it, so I ain't going to do that. All right. So, yeah. Oh, thank y'all for following through. Who is this? Christ, Spidey, Loose, and Boogie. But I was about to roll out. But thank you. You can record. Check it out after it uploads, finishes rasterizing, whatever it does on here. Yeah. So this has been Brittany Naji and Sister Zara Bay, the authors of Sister Tahida Najiullah El of Califa Media Publishing and the purple paperclip.com. You can find both of those at califamedia.com and the purplepaperclip.com. All right, and this will be posted to YouTube sooner than later. Thank you, and y'all be cool. Peace.